going on, everybody? Ryan Chapman and John Hoover here, the AllSooners crew in Morgantown, as we witness history, John. For the first time since West Virginia came to the Big 12, they toppled the Sooners 23-20 in a rainy, wet, cold, windy, and all-around terrible performance from Oklahoma.
You would know, Ryan. You were out there and it's shooting the videos. Be sure and catch the highlights at AllSooners.com. Ryan also shot the press conference stuff. AllSooners.com is where you're going to want to be for all that, because this video, as good as it's going to be, is not going to tell the full story. Sorry, we can only do that in a couple of minutes. This was it was a weird day in Morgantown. It was a weird game. First half finished with a flurry after a 3-0, almost halftime at 3-0. First half finished with an absolute flurry. They scored on a 2-point conversion, the touchdown, field goal. It's like, wait a minute, what game were we watching? Then the second half comes along. And for Oklahoma, the second half, especially the fourth quarter, was just a disaster.
Yeah, everything came grinding to a halt. Eric Gray finished with 211 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. That was the end of the positive things we're going to say about the offense. It was bad all around. Dylan Gabriel, if you look at his completion percentage, I think he was 17 of 28, somewhere in there. You might say, okay, that was so-so. But if you watch the game, again, we pointed this out last week with the Baylor game, but Dylan Gabriel doesn't play very well in win, and this win was coming out the north end zone from north to south, so he was having to throw directly into it in the fourth quarter, and as a result, Jeff Levy said that he said for the first time this season after the game that he had to take the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands. That's how poor the offense was moving. That's how poor Dylan Gabriel was moving. It wasn't all him. Marvin Mims in the second quarter drops what would have been a walk-in touchdown. And then Gabriel was misfiring all through the first and second quarter. It felt like an offense that never really got any rhythm going against the 118th ranked passing defense in the country in West Virginia.
Yeah, Marvin said the cold and the wind and the rain bothered him catching the football. He took his gloves off because they were too wet, so he couldn't, and then his hands were cold. He put the gloves back on because his hands were too cold. Receivers can be divas. Jay Norvell told me one time, you guys remember him, old OU receiver coach, told me they could be like Ferraris. One little thing goes wrong for a receiver and the whole operation stops. So it was a tough day for the Oklahoma offense. Ryan, just as tough a day for the Oklahoma defense, especially when it came time to getting off the field in crunch time. They couldn't do it. This is the third time. Brent Venables pointed this out. Third time this year. The defense has been on the field at the end of the game with a chance to get a stop and get the ball back to the offense. Failed all 3 times. Today was just another example.
Yeah, 7 of 19 on third downs. West Virginia converted. 4 of 5 on fourth downs. The Mountaineers converted. I wish someone asked Brent Venables about that during the week. Oh, that was us. That was on AllSooners.com. But here's the most unfortunate thing, John. When JT Daniels was in the game, the defensive line looked as good as we've seen since Nebraska. JT Daniels was having to get on the move, off his spot. Danny Stutzman played like a house on fire. He was everywhere. And all of that wiped away the second that Garrett Green, the backup quarterback, came in. Garrett Green can use his legs a little bit, and while no quarterbacks are really having a ton of success through the air, Oklahoma and running quarterbacks, welcome to the problem yet again. And Garrett Green was great on third and fourth downs, and it went from a really solid performance where the defense was keeping Oklahoma in the game, to one where the defense couldn't win the game as West Virginia milked 6.5 minutes off the clock to kill it with a field goal. Oklahoma's offense ran 10 plays in the fourth quarter because they couldn't stay on the field. The defense couldn't get stops.
Garrett Green, 119 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, 138 yards and a touchdown passing. This is their backup quarterback. The kid has breathed new life into this offense, and he probably deserves to be the starter from here on out. He just brings a different energy to that offense. He looks like one of those kids that just loves to play in the rain. Not so much for JT Daniels. Things weren't working out for him. You mentioned the sack. It was the first sack for Ethan Downs since the Nebraska game. Oklahoma had 4 sacks in their past 6 games. They came out today. They had 2 in the first quarter, I think, or at least in the first half. They were getting after the quarterback, and Neil Brown did a good job, made a change. And that changed the tenor of the game by having that backup quarterback in there.
Yeah, last week Brent Venables talked about needing to make winning plays. Oklahoma didn't do that again for the second straight week. As a result, the Sooners are now 5-5, 2-5 in Big 12 play, and this loss to West Virginia pulls Oklahoma in a 3-way tie with West Virginia and Iowa State for dead last in the Big 12 Conference Wow, how the mighty have fallen.
Yeah.
Next
don't
week.
don't forget special teams.
Yeah.
Special teams gave up a 42-yard kickoff return at the end of the first half that allowed West Virginia to get a touchdown right before halftime. Special teams gave up a fake punt when they had the punt team out there, the punt return team out there, and all they had to do was go for 2 yards and get a conversion. And then Zach Schmidt made a 32-yard field goal but missed a 54-yarder. He was short. I was watching him before the game, and he was missing short from 54. It was like nobody was here watching him except me. It's literally like when he lined up to kick it, I'm like, he's not going to make this. He didn't make any in the pregame. He can't kick it from 54. They asked him to kick it into the wind from 54 with the rain. Not even close.
Yeah.
And then the potential game winner, 20-20 at the end of the game, bangs one off the the right upright. I asked Brent Venables in the postgame press conference, did you think might be a good idea to go for it right there? 4th and 3 for good field position, short enough to kick a 46-yard field goal. He said, as bad as things were going on offense, I didn't feel confident that we were going to get that 4th down conversion.
You know what? I think that was the right call.
He probably was right.
Which is really sad. And Schmidt also shanked a kickoff while we're talking about that. But they did get the 2-point conversion that didn't end up mattering, the block and the Billy Bowman return. So a lot of bad. We'll see if the Sooners can get back on track next week. It's Bedlam as both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State limp into Norman. The Cowboys got a win, though, against Iowa State, so they're riding a little bit higher. The entire crew will be back. Josh Kyle will be back with us on Monday and Tuesdays. We roll through all the coordinators, Brent Venables, the players. All of that stuff can be found on AllSooners.com, as well as our full postgame reaction. We're about to wrap this bad boy up and go record the postgame podcast, where we'll stretch our legs out a little bit and see just how bad this Oklahoma performance was, because it was brutal. But for John Hoover, I'm Ryan Chapman. I'm going to go dry out, maybe thaw a little bit. We'll catch you back in Norman. And as always, on AllSooners.com.